All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Sunday, October 6th, 2024. This is your update on Tropical Storm Milton. We are looking at the storm in the western Gulf of Mexico, getting organized as it moves kind of off to the east. And this is expected to pick up a more northeast trend over the next couple of days and landfall and move across Florida on Wednesday into early Thursday. We've had some new trends and some new forecast updates. Rest of the Atlantic Basin, not much of a threat. Otherwise, we do have Hurricanes Kirk and Leslie out here. Both these storms are going to recurve out to sea and not be a problem. There's some more stuff trying to follow Leslie, but that stuff is for another day and will not be a problem for the U.S. for a while, if at all. So this is the latest from the National Hurricane Center as of 11 a.m. Maximum sustained winds with Milton up to 65 miles per hour. The hurricane hunters went in there this morning from NOAA. And they found the winds a little bit stronger and the pressure lower. That's not uncommon with storms that are small like Milton is. Tropical storm force winds are only going out a few dozen miles from that center. So satellite presentation and imagery can be a little deceiving with a small hurricane or a small tropical storm. So NOAA got that corrected, and the position was a little bit further south of what the Hurricane Center had. Not dramatically, but a little bit. So we've had a little bit of a southward adjustment on some of the recent forecast runs. Movement to the east-southeast is 6 miles per hour, and tropical storm warnings are in effect for portions of the northern Yucatan. Nothing is up for Florida yet, but that will change pretty soon. So you can see this cone. What we're expecting is Milton to take that more east-southeast trend for the next about 12 hours and then begin to recurve to the northeast over Monday into Tuesday and even into Wednesday morning. And that landfall point right now somewhere north or south of Tampa Bay, likely somewhere between Fort Myers and just north of Tampa, is probably the best goalpost for the storm. Again, more of South Florida is in that cone. And then some of the Big Bend is still in the cone. So this is a storm we definitely want to respect the cone because, again, this cone is only showing all the potential places the eye of the storm can make landfall. This is not to show where winds are going to be the strongest. This does not show where surge is going to be the strongest. All this shows us is where that eye could come ashore because there is still some model discrepancies. And with a storm like Milton that is kind of on the small side right now and being moved by some non-tropical processes, the track can and will change to some degree. So if you are looking at this cone and you see the center is somewhere just south of Tampa and you're up here and you think, oh, well, I'm good to go. The storm's not going to hit me. You know, you could still be directly hit by the storm, and everyone on the west coast of Florida, for the most part, except for like way up into Appalachia Bay or in the Florida Keys, needs to be prepared as if a major hurricane is going to be on your doorstep in 72 hours. That is the best way we can tell you guys to prepare for this. So looking at the Hurricane Center's track, a few other things to note. They do have this becoming a major hurricane now sooner, as soon as tomorrow afternoon. We expect a period of quick intensification to outright rapid intensification tonight and early tomorrow. Milton's best chance for intensification is going to be between now and probably late on Tuesday. As the storm approaches Florida, there's some question that it might begin to weaken a little bit. But of course, we cannot prepare for that, and we cannot hope for that. We can hope for it, but we can't prepare as if it's going to weaken just yet. The Hurricane Center still has us making landfall as a 125-mile-an-hour Category 3 hurricane, and it could be stronger than that. We always prepare for a category higher than what the Hurricane Center has. Satellite presentation of Milton today, looking better organized overall. Visible shows a lot of overshooting cloud tops and some gravity waves emitting from the center of that burst of convection right there near the eye. We still have this strong flow moving down into the storm, a barrier jet racing across the parts of the Mexican coastline along the mountains of the Sierra Madres, and then moving into the storm, causing some background vorticity, and this is overall helping Milton wrap up. It's over very warm water, and as we can tell here, the wind shear is very light out of the west, but it's very light overall. A few high clouds moving away, but Milton is largely in a very favorable environment for intensification and will be a little bit longer. This is a morning microwave imagery pass, kind of showing you that we saw the dreaded cyan ring last night of potential for intensification, and today we can see that microwave imagery suggests that we have nearly complete eye wall of the small hurricane, or tropical storm for now, but hurricane likely soon, and a couple examples of banding moving into the storm. So you've got banding and you've got a pretty much completed eye wall. Hurricane hunters noted that as well. That eye wall was almost totally closed, just a slight exposure maybe on the south side, but that won't be for much longer. So bottom line is that Milton is showing several signs that this compact storm is getting ready to intensify pretty quick. I want to go ahead and show you the GFS. And we'll kind of show you how this looks. So the storm here will back you up to Sunday morning. So the storm begins to dive a little bit more to the east-southeast towards the Yucatan, and then GFS shows pretty rapid intensification tonight and through tomorrow going into Monday, and then by early Tuesday, the storm is a significant hurricane to the north of the Yucatan, and then Tuesday into Wednesday, the storm begins to recurve a bit more to the northeast and moves towards Florida's coast, and then makes landfall on Wednesday afternoon somewhere in the Tampa area. But that's just one of the possibilities here. As some of our other models indicate that we could see this a little bit further north or a little bit further south. So we're going to show you some of the other things we're watching for as far as Milton making landfall with the models. So one of the things that is going to be a factor is the timing of the dry air and wind shear, because we believe that Milton for the next couple of days is going to have a very light wind shear and overall a very moist environment. However, as we get this towards Florida, things could begin to change. So we can see here on the GFS, 700 to 300 millibar relative humidity here on tropical tidbits. Milton still in that very favorable environment, not much wind shear at trough, and high pressure from the next cold front off to the north still, and our system kind of moving along and intensifying. Now, as it gets close, notice how the pressure begins to level off and even begins to come up a little bit. Notice how it falls, 970, 960, and then 964, 962, 956 still falling. This is into early Wednesday, but then right there, we begin to see an uptick in the pressure, and then it pretty much stays steady or begins to weaken as it makes landfall, and we can see dry air beginning to invade the storm. Now, in the GFS shows this happening pretty much too late, as Milton does still make landfall as a powerful, probably a Category 3 hurricane, given this pressure. But that dry air just starts to invade the storm. But that's not all the models. We can look at the HWRF as another example of this. The HWRF and the HFAS are regional hurricane models that are a little bit more high resolution and specifically designed to track hurricanes, show a bit of a different approach. The HWRF will back you up here. So HWRF kind of shows that the borderline explosive intensification through tonight and on Monday, with this storm becoming a powerful, probably Category 4 hurricane by Monday afternoon. And again, notice how small this vortex is. Milton's going to be a very compact hurricane to start out, and small storms are prone to very sharp fluctuation intensity changes. So the storm can get very, very strong, very, very fast, but then it can weaken very fast too. This is a very common trait of very small hurricanes, which is what Milton is going to be. This is not like Helene, where Helene was already bigger than Milton before it was even a tropical storm. This is a very different animal we're playing with here, at least at the start. Now that could change as it makes landfall. HWRF shows us bottoming out, potentially Category 5 intensities when these models are getting really aggressive. But then notice how that pressure starts rising as it moves in, and then it rises up to about 950 as it makes landfall. Still a very powerful hurricane, but it does show a weakening trend on approach. HFAS is even a bit more expansive with this. So the HFAS has this bombing out well into Category 5. And notice, watch the two things that happen here. Okay, so we're on Tuesday evening on the HFAS, showing a very powerful Category 4 or 5 hurricane. Just an absolute compact buzzsaw monster, powerful hurricane, just small, but very, very intense. Two things happen here as this thing approaches Florida. Number one, the pressure bombs out like at 9:05, which is just ridiculous. But it did this with Helene too. We're not going to look at that number specifically. We're just going to know that even into Wednesday morning, we could see a very strong hurricane. But this is the 12 or so hours before landfall. Two things happen. That pressure begins to rise very quickly. It rises very sharply as it approaches land. Now, the HFAS is slower than some of the other models, but the pressure rises from like the low 900s, which would be a preposterously strong storm, back to like the 960s. But look at the wind field. Watch how fast that wind field expands. So the storm starts getting blown out by drier air and extratropical transition, which is basically what happens when the storm approaches. This is the upper level winds here on the GFS. As Milton gets close to shore, you're going to have a lot of upper divergence, which is winds moving away from the storm in different directions. And this should open up the storm and cause the wind field to expand. But the increased wind shear could also weaken it. So you could have a storm that goes from a compact kind of buzzsaw storm and gets bigger faster, but also kind of gets strung out faster. So it becomes a weaker but broader storm, which can change impacts, not necessarily make it better or worse, but that's something we'll have to watch very carefully is how much does the wind field expand with Milton and how much does it weaken before it makes landfall. Two very important things. And the timing is going to be very precipitous because basically as the storm is coming in, 8 to 12 hours either way could be the difference in getting the storm to weaken dramatically and expand or stay a compact buzzsaw that runs into Florida and then starts doing what we were talking about. There's two very different worlds right here. And unfortunately, it's going to be kind of a close edge to decide which one, if the dry air and the shear and the upper divergence can get this storm to begin to change before it gets on shore or after. Timing is going to be hard too. We can go over to Tomer Berg's website and show you the ellipse of the super ensemble multi-model viewer. The ellipse being very large in this direction means that track is starting to narrow again just north of Tampa to about Fort Myers seems to be our goalpost for this one. But the timing is very tough. Some models have it all the way back here on Wednesday evening, while some models have already cleared Florida by Wednesday evening completely. So there's still a huge range of potential outcome. Again, the average is for this to make landfall sometime Wednesday night around like 7, 8 o'clock Eastern time, but some models are dramatically slower and some models are dramatically faster, which means that the timing is very suspect, and that is a direct tie-in to intensity because, again, a faster storm may come in before it has a chance to weaken and just rip across Florida. A storm that moves slower might have 8 to 12 hours to sit offshore and begin to start having that dry air and shear start tearing it apart and weaken it down a little bit, which would dramatically reduce the potential landfall intensity. And then there's obviously questions or things in the middle there. Models here today, the suite of models at 12Z did shift a little bit further south. We can see now the Hurricane Center is lying a bit north of the middle of the guidance and basically is now looking like it might be very close to Tampa or just south. Again, this is not going to be a dramatic adjustment in terms of distance on the track, but the track just north of Tampa is far, far worse than a track just south of Tampa. That could absolutely change the potential for catastrophic storm surge into Tampa Bay. The storm does lift a bit further north and comes in just north of Tampa Bay, like some of these models are showing. Not so much the H-warp, but H-warp kind of shows a direct hit, which would even be better than something like the H-fast, which shows all those winds pushing up into Tampa Bay. That would be a 10 to 15 foot storm surge and it would be the worst hurricane in at least 100 years, if not pretty much on record for Tampa Bay, going back to at least the 1850s. The other option is that this comes in a bit further south of Tampa, and then the winds blow offshore into the bay, and the water and wind and surge is definitely less than it would be if the storm comes into the north. So that's a small micromanage. The other thing that our intensity models show is this is kind of like your potential landfall time, like window. And notice how a lot of models are peaking this storm just before the landfall. So you can kind of see like that last like 8 to 12 hours, going to be a big deal to see how Milton comes in. That's kind of what I got for you guys. The other thing we'll talk about a little bit, and I'm going to get into Jacksonville more tomorrow when we have a little bit more confidence, is the potential for a heavy rainfall event across northern Florida. I think there's a good, strong chance of really strong onshore flow. You guys are getting a lot of rain this week before Milton even shows up, and that'll only continue as the storm map passes by on Wednesday. And there's a potential for fairly widespread rainfall event across northern Florida, and I think the models are underdoing the rainfall potential a little bit. And then even down into South Florida, kind of the same story, a lot of onshore winds before Milton even gets here, in Miami as well. Pretty much the entire east coast of Florida could be looking at that 8 to 12 inches of rain through this whole rainfall event. And then there's also this potential for, flooding across northern Florida as the storm passes by. And then there's going to be a lot of power outages and whatnot in Orlando and even into Melbourne as the core of that hurricane passes by. So we'll have more specific impacts for Jacksonville and the rest of the area. We'll probably start doing the thing tomorrow where we do the separate videos. But that's pretty much what I got for you guys today. Again, Milton, a very strong storm and is going to be a powerful hurricane on approach and is a very dangerous storm for Florida. And we're going to have to watch this very carefully over the next couple of days. So that's what I got for you guys today. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.